Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Hivemind podcast. Today we have a bit of a different crew. We've got myself, Ceteris, head of research at Delphi. We got Jason coming back, head of markets. We got LTR making another appearance on the show on the markets team at Delphi. And then we've got Flip making his second appearance on the podcast on the DeFi team at Delphi. So this is a purely Delphi research Hivemind. I don't think we've had all research Hivemind before, so that's good. So yeah, we got I don't know, it's been kind of like a weird market. It seems like there's not a ton to talk about, but there have been a few things that have been happening here or there. I guess we'll start just with like overall market sentiment. It's Wednesday the 19th, 10:30, just after 10:30 in the morning. Bitcoin is, I mean, it was looking okay this morning and now it's back under 91K. Everything is dumping again. So yeah, Jason, how's the market been? What's the vibe?
I mean, it's red again for every day at this point for seemingly the last week or two. I guess we've had a couple days that were like flat and like mixed in there, but it's mostly just straight down. We've kind of just gone straight down at this point from like the top of the range to the bottom of the range, like 90, 89K, right? That's kind of like the range that was carved out in December before the tariff tantrums blew up the market. And then kind of back there again, right? Time's a flat circle. So yeah, I don't know. Market's kind of like obviously like there's just no spot bid, right? Like clearly TradFi is bouncing nicely today. Obviously it's still weak, but like it's bouncing and putting in like at least like a sustained rally so far today. And Bitcoin is just like the first time you get like one like sell candle in equities, you just like immediately puke in crypto. So you pretty much are just tracking to the downside and barely tracking to the upside. So it's just dog shit. Like there's no like, pardon my language, but it's just like the market is just like not rewarding holding. It's not rewarding any areas that like you would expect to see reactions. You're just like not really seeing anything. So yeah, it's just like in terms of risk appetite and behavior in crypto, it's just like there's not much to get excited about. And then I don't know, you like compound it. Um, it's just like, yeah, it's just like you don't. I think the big thing is like we're just like not tracking with equities to the upside, right? We're effectively decorrelated to the upside and perfectly correlated to the downside. So it's just like for me, I'm just kind of like waiting to see like when there is like some kind of sustained appetite to bid risk, because clearly it is not here at the moment.
It almost seems like Bitcoin has become like a Trump approval rating trade. Like Trump approval has been like nuking Bitcoin nukes, and then like when Trump's viewed as like positive or viewed as doing good things, it almost seems like that's when Bitcoin pumps. So I don't really like how correlated it's been to like the Trump trade, quote unquote. And that's been kind of interesting to see. That being said, it is a much more global asset. So, but yeah, to your point, like if you know, it's very good that Gemini 3 was very good, and it's good that Nvidia, well, I guess earnings aren't out yet, but like they'll probably hit. And like because I think like to your point, if equities did like actually nuke,
Yeah, like equities are just at all-time highs pretty much. You know, they're down a little bit right now, but like they're really close to all-time highs. And if they were to actually like pull back a little bit,
yeah, I mean like when what
crypto
was
would
it, the
get soft.
tariffs or Iran dropped and then equities actually nuked, we literally just like went to like 70K or something. So I could imagine it being much worse this time around, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
I think the PTSD for people is that this is exactly what it was at the end of 21. Is that
Yeah.
I remember like crypto was selling off a lot, and I remember all these tweets from people being like, equities are still at all-time highs, like there's no reason to panic. And it was really just crypto being first, right? So that doesn't mean that the exact
Yeah.
same is going to happen this time, but it's definitely something that is like getting in people's heads a bit.
But I kind of want to go back to LTR's point. Is Bitcoin still a Trump trade? Like, I mean, you had Trump and Xi essentially shake hands, and markets literally went down. Like Bitcoin went down. Like, so I don't know. I don't know if Bitcoin still is the Trump trade. Like,
I
I
meant
feel
like
like
approval ratings. Like
approval ratings. Yeah,
approval,
yeah,
it's a Trump approval rating trade. Like when approval ratings were like really positive on Trump and on the rise, and like people were like, oh, tariffs are actually
yeah.
gonna work. Like we
So
actually, I think, bounded well. And then like now everyone's calling his bluff consistently, and like I just think there's no like, yeah.
what he says carries less weight now. Like we need to see things, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's like the boy who cried wolf at this point. Like
Yeah.
nobody takes what he says seriously. And you know, you get like 40 Bloomberg tweets a day of like his voice or like his excerpts from his speech, and it's just tiring. And I think like that's just like people are just fatigued at this point, and so it's like they just rather ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because 6 months ago, you'd get some notification from the Bloomberg terminal, and all of a sudden markets were moving, a standard or two standard deviations, and now it happens, and it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. On to the next thing. What's actually happening in the economy? What's actually happening in markets? Is AI a bubble? What's Bitcoin? Like things like that. Fundamentals now.
Where do you think we're at, Flip?
I've been
Yeah, you've been
quite
pretty bearish for a while.
Yeah, I've been quite bearish since the last time I came on. And I kind of hold that. Like I've lightened up on my shorts a little bit here. Just given I think, the pullback has been quite healthy. And if we continue to go lower, I'm happy being neutral here. I've got a fair amount of cash. Got a fair amount of stables and
Right, like that's exactly like my point, right? Like I was on that Milk Road podcast, and like we're down like 3K from where Bitcoin was, but like right, like it's like not really much at the grains. It's like if you're short from like, if you flipped the bias correctly and you flipped short either with hedges or just net short or whatever, anywhere in that like range high, like 110 to 115 or somewhere up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was also it was like somewhat obvious too. Like after 1010, like there was something clearly wrong.
Yeah, you had no bid, nothing.
And then you were getting good news from the White House and Trump, and markets weren't reacting positively. So like good news was not equaling upside. So it was like I feel like it was quite clear. And here, like we're
Yeah, so if you're
news is good and
positioned
bad.
short
Yeah.
from up there, the question is
Yeah.
where do you lighten up, right? And like that's how like I generally try to like look for where I think like bottom positioning should like form. And like if I was short from 110, which I wasn't, or 115, right? I would definitely be taking, and if I didn't already, take some off at like mid range at like 100, like I would definitely be lightening up, if not going relatively full flat. Because if you're not going full flat or lightening up, right, you're like you have to be expecting more than a couple more $1,000s of downside. Like it's just not worth holding it for like another 2-3K downside if you're risking like a range low bounce back up to 100 or higher, right? Like
Yeah, it's no longer a fat page. It's no longer an easy trade
it's
to
like
keep on.
that's kind of like one thing I look at as like an area that like you should start to see something happening if it was going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, like you'll know, right? So like I think this is an interesting spot, right? This 88, 89, 90K range low area, right? Obviously you can probably puke lower if like you get some liquidation or whatever, but like I don't know, mid 80s to 90s seems reasonable right now. So I'm just kind of like waiting to see any kind of spot bid return. Like every day it just seemingly like Asia opens and Binance nukes, New York opens and Coinbase nukes. I mean, Coinbase actually has been buying today on the spot side of things, which is maybe
It's a good
sign.
time to record the pod too, because we've got two big events coming up. We've got Nvidia earnings today, and then tomorrow, like NFP got moved up to Thursday and U-Rate. So these are the first prints since the government shut down.
So basically, whatever we say today will be outdated.
Yes,
will be by
yes.
time. Yeah,
We'll
exactly.
cut it out. Just kidding.
So yeah, I don't know. Market obviously sucks, right? And like the easy trade has obviously been shorting, and you've been rewarded for it. And at this point, like as objectively as I can say, since I wasn't short, it'd be like, I don't know, the risk reward isn't there anymore like it was a week or two ago. So it's like, I don't know, if you haven't already been completely blasted by the market, I think like you might get some relief relatively soon into Q4 and stuff, or into December.
Imagine you say that Nvidia just misses earnings.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Nvidia misses earnings, and we just
everyone
we
dies.
just gap down.
Yeah,
to
and I think
85K.
an interesting data point about Nvidia earnings is retail is actually, they haven't just been full throttling Nvidia every earnings over the last 4 quarters. Like they've been buying when they beat and they've been selling when they miss. So like we might actually have like a rational market reaction after the bell today. Just to keep in mind is like, okay, yeah, if it, misses are going to be bearish and beats will be bullish. Like it'll be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's pretty much like it's not really a great view of the market. Is just like just not.
I think there's just like a weird sense of unease right now. Like perhaps like not like to your point. Like I don't know many people who are like wanting to like short here because they're like very very directionally bearish. But I think people are just like almost worried or like uneasy about bidding or shorting because it's just like there's no clear like path now. Even like the Bloomberg podcast is posting like all these bubble watch podcast. I don't know. It's a funny time because like everyone's so worried about the bubble, and it feels like we're all highly alerted towards the bubble. So I think there's some like adverse signal there, and like perceptive bias where like you're gonna find things that look bubblish even if they aren't there. But yeah, it's just an interesting and like uneasy time in crypto.
I guess the bull case or like comparison would be the equity market in 2019 that went through like this pretty bearish few month period, and everybody thought the big bear was coming, and then ended up being okay. I think it was 2019, maybe it was 2018. It was before COVID though. Then obviously COVID kind of changed stuff around there, and then that's whole history there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's been pockets of stuff. Like Zcash, we can move on to this. Like this is such a polarizing topic, it feels like. I really don't know with Zcash. I think there's like a realistic upside case, but at the same time, if the market really does, it seems like a lot of people might be hiding out in Zcash too because it's been doing so well. And if the market really does turn, maybe that kind of goes with it.
It kind of reminds me, funny enough, of like if you remember pre like Iran war nuke, everyone was hiding out in hype, and it was like I don't know 45, and everyone got slaughtered because it like dipped down to like 20 again, I think, and that's like what everyone held because it was like what was strong, it was what was like up, green every day when everything else was nuking, and so everyone was like, I'm just gonna go into this, be saved, and then lo and behold, it gets slaughtered. I mean, it's eventually back, so like obviously you would have been fine if you held through that, but I don't think a lot of people did. So to your point about like a safe haven asset, like it does kind of feel like that right now, which I mean, if we pump and we bottom, like it won't matter, but if we do nuke, I could see like maybe a delayed reflexivity to the downside.
I do wonder how exposed it is. I haven't really gone in and seen how much OI and stuff has been built up since it's been like people have started relisting it too, right, over the last like week or two. So I don't know. I could see it. It's obviously one of the only coins that isn't completely devoid of a bid, so like that is something that you have to like keep an eye out for. It's just tough. Like if so like the thing is like most people are long biased, right? Most people don't short, most people don't do that stuff. So like when you're looking at assets to buy, right? Like what are you going to buy when the market is like really apathetic at best, and there's just like obviously people are going to crowd into this. So like it makes sense, and like would I personally buy it here? No. But that's because I bought it a bit lower maybe. So like I don't know, like I think Zcash I don't think the top is in on Zcash, to be honest. I think it probably goes up to like 1200 or something. Assuming the market doesn't just like Nvidia doesn't miss, Bitcoin doesn't drop to 75K, right? Like assuming we avoid like a full on just 10-10 redo and we just nuke lower across the board, like it seems pretty clear. Like, it seems pretty clear to me that Zcash is like where some of the only money that is bidding crypto is right now. Like, hype barely, like, pump is just dead at this point, right? Like, just down only. Like, so when there is, like, even in, like, bearish market conditions, like, rallies happen, like bear market rallies are a thing. Like, you do tend to bounce after drawing down 30% on Bitcoin. Like, it's a very standard thing across, like, historical samples, like 30% drawdowns into decent rallies, right? Like, it's all very standard. So, like, if I'm trying to, like, be open to catching something like that, which most people probably are since they're all long bias, like, what are they going to bid when that time comes? To me, it seems very obvious that most people are just going to go buy the thing that's recovered well, has shown strength, and will probably break all-time highs, because I still don't think it's something that's like well, like, I think supply is relatively cornered on it. I think there's I don't know. I just think it seems like the only obvious trade if the market bottoms for like a
I feel like
decent
the
move.
trades I get burned on the most are the ones that I think that like supply is cornered. So like I'm very like cautious of like doing that, especially with like things like the smaller cap tokens. Anytime I've thought that supply was
There's always
somewhat
more.
controlled.
There's always more
Exactly,
tokens.
exactly. And then you always see like late cycle, you see these pockets that do quite well. Like Zcash privacy is obviously one now. Hyperliquid's held up relatively decent compared to others, and it's like okay, are there going to be other pockets, and if so, what are those? Are they the applications with buybacks and revenue and a constant bid, or is it something completely new like privacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Jason's point though, like if we do bottom, everyone's just gonna plow into Zcash because
Yeah.
it's gonna be like the highest beta to the upside. So I could easily see it making like new highs on like a giant spike, honestly. So, but yeah, like as far as going forward, it does feel like I don't know, it feels like very much hot potato in the market right now. Like you're either in those assets that like Flip mentioned, those little pockets, or you're just like eating, crap day in day out, just getting whipped. So it's always funny to see.
Yeah, I mean, some of these coin prices, man, you compare them to the 1010, and they're below like Wix
Yeah.
now. You know,
Which makes me cautious bidding like ones that are like haven't filled the wick yet. Like we love talking about filling the wick to the upside, and like these stronger coins that have held up well that haven't filled the wick to the downside gives me like I'm not ready to jump in. Also, like if we're in a K-shaped economy, I don't think we get a V-shaped recovery like we become
yeah,
accustomed.
like when 1010 happened, I was saying how, it's definitely painful, but somebody that doesn't trade perps and just holds spot, it's like not terrible. But then basically I've just had to sit through the last 5 weeks of it slowly dripping below those wicks now, And so it's almost worse in a sense where at least 1010, if you got blown out, you got blown out and you move on. And I'm just sitting here every day, like just looking at a little bleed, a little
We
bleed.
had a quick death. You're having a slow bleed.
Yeah. So
Pick your poison. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's been some bright spots though. I think, MetaDAO has had their ICOs have been pretty successful so far, and we'll see if it keeps up. I think m- the one that's done best is Avicii, and then which is like this neobank thing. Um, and then I think yesterday they had one sell out, but I think the one yesterday was kind of interesting. I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but Polymarket has been adding these prediction markets for MetaDAO raises. Okay. And so you're basically there's these prediction markets on what will the total amount of committed capital be on a MetaDAO raise. So the Solomon one was like I think it was like 12 mil they had committed for a while, and then in the last hour or two it got up over 100 mil. So then a bunch of these poly market traders were all pissed, and now they're calling MetaDAO a scam because uh the it like cleared that 100 mil threshold at like the last minute. Um but that's like the way these raises kind of work on MetaDAO. Um, it kind of makes sense that you see these massive numbers because the team ended up raising 8 mil and there's over 100 mil commitments, so people get like 92% of their money back. Um, I think one of these days on the MetaDAO sales, you're going to see a team take like a lot more in the raise than people maybe expected, and then that'll maybe temper this kind of activity. Because the way now is like if somebody wants to get a big allocation, if they think this thing is going to be like 10, 20x oversubscribed, then to get the amount you really want, you kind of need to put in 10, 20x above that, right? And so it's like a pretty big capital commitment. And then you don't actually know the final amount that they're going to raise until after the sale. So, one of these days, if you're expecting a team to raise maybe like 5 mil, and then it gets like 75 mil commitments and they keep 50 of it, then you might see kind of like behavior change here. So I think that'd be kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know how much like attention you guys have been paying to MetaDAO. I know that a lot of people are kind of skeptical of it working. But from my perspective, it's like the one part of the market that is somewhat interesting these days. Like they have a lot of legit projects launching there with good kind of like token holder rights. And they have some pretty good momentum.
Yeah, I mean, it's always cool seeing like new experiments in crypto, and definitely like MetaDAO has seemed the most fresh. Like it feels more akin to like the cool shit we saw during DeFi summer and whatnot back when like people were actually like exploring frontiers of crypto. So I really like it from that aspect, just because like it's a breath of fresh air. It's not another perp dex. It's not another
Sorry, Flip.
bot fun website or whatever. Like we've just seen too much of that, and like so from that aspect, I think it's really cool. I think it has worked very well for getting money to these teams, and it's a great place to raise. That being said, like we mentioned in chats before this, like startup returns are, they follow J curve. So like we won't actually know how well it'll work for like these startups until probably 2 or 3 years out. And like I think that's worth knowing. Obviously, from a trade aspect, like I did mention on a recent like podcast I did that if we do get like a prolonged bear market, I would be really interested in buying MetaDAO stuff because their treasury is like locked away, right? So the team is basically forced to to continue to build throughout the bear market to see their return on capital. So from that aspect, like yeah, I mean, if we get a bear market, I'm probably going to be looking to like buying all of that stuff, just because they kind of have to meet their metrics to unlock capital.
I think those performance-based unlocks are like one of the coolest thing that
Yeah,
MetaDAO has
definitely,
pioneered.
definitely.
Like the linear unlocks that crypto has, like we've done for the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think they've been pretty bad because they're not the right incentives. Like the team, investors, community aren't all aligned. And now what MetaDAO is doing, and there are other teams leaning into this as well, I think is very good. And I think LTR makes a good point. And those are the teams in a bear market that you want to be watching. Like those are ones that are going to be super interesting and might have those asymmetric, Solana like runs when we get back to a full
Yeah,
swing.
I definitely don't think that MetaDAO is like the right structure for every project, obviously. Um, I do think though that it is a really good way to actually get a community versus like airdrops or other kind of methods. Um, I do think that for MetaDAO to really be deemed a success, I think you need something that launched on MetaDAO to be worth like multiples of MetaDAO itself, right? I think that's kind of the point. That should be the point of a launchpad, is to actually create valuable projects, right? And like valuable tokens. And so, yeah, I think I've just been impressed with, these guys have been doing this for basically 2 years now, gone through a bunch of iterations. They moved on from like the pure futarchy and thinking more about like these practical things of basically making ICOs better. I think there's an interesting one coming up that I think Flip is pretty bearish on this idea or sector, but I kind of wanted to talk about just this in general. And it's like this is it's this perp aggregator called Ranger Finance. And we don't have to talk about Ranger specifically, but more so just like the idea of perp aggregators. We've seen aggregators basically show up in like every sector, right? Whenever there's enough, whenever somebody launches some primitive and it's very successful, and then a lot of competitors come around, and then people are using all these competitors. And as much as we've had perp dexes in the past, Hyperliquid kind of actually kickstarted this new meta, right? Like it's funny that like the perp dex meta is now, while we have had perp dexes over the last few years, it was like Hyperliquid was the first one that was, I guess, really good and actually started competing in a realistic way with the centralized exchanges, right? And so now you have people doing all these delta neutral farms on, like, they're using Lighter, Paradex, Hyperliquid, Drift, whatever else. So yeah, I think the idea of like a perp aggregator is, you can kind of lower price impact by, I guess, putting this trade on multiple venues, and then your collateral and everything. So there's a few projects coming in this area, perp aggregation. But I think, I don't know what you guys like. If you
I
guys
think
have
one of
strong
the,
takes about these,
yeah, I don't want to FUD like Ranger or anything like that because I mean that team's OG. They've been around a long time, but I think Perpdex is one of the things like they're going to do really well, and this is where they'll beat a lot of the centralized exchanges. Is just that they're very composable and they're able to unify margin in one account, and I think that's one of the big unlocks from Perpdexes. Like if Perpdexes really do become like the Wall Street of the on-chain economy in 5 to 10 years, I think you're going to want all your dollars in one spot, and perp aggregators won't do that. I think one of the superpowers is that all the liquidity is already somewhat aggregated and siloed in 3 to 4 perp dexes, these big financial hubs. And if you end up using a perp aggregator, then all of a sudden the capital efficiencies that you get from portfolio margin are gone. And I think, people, that's not a great user experience because one of the big unlocks is the efficiency and capital. And I like using the example like with portfolio margining. If you're a delta neutral fund, like a professional hedge fund, like delta neutral, you make 7% a year and you're doing pretty good. And all of a sudden you get 70-90% capital efficiencies through unified margin, portfolio margining. All of a sudden, if you want to be risk averse, you can take that extra 70-90% in efficiency gains and just go put it in UST bills, and all of a sudden you're annualizing at 10%. That's a lot of carry, and that's quite meaningful. And so that's one reason I'm not a big fan of perp aggregators. And then also perps are very different instruments than spot. Aggregators work for spot because spot markets are a quite simple instrument, and perps are not, and perps vary by venue. So like if you have 10 assets on Hyperliquid, Binance, and Paradex, the same 10 assets, the way in which they calculate funding and things like that are very different. So even those perps are different. So I'm not super optimistic on these perp aggregators. Like they might be a great trade, and Ranger team has been around for quite some time, but long term I'm not sure that's sustainable or the business I want to be a part of.
yeah. What if what if it's like you using it? Do you think they're useful for like, okay, maybe you're not going to put on the same long on like 3 different exchanges, but if you're running like these people that are running these delta neutral strategies, do you think it'd be useful just to do that from a perp aggregator in a
No, I
sense?
like
Like,
I like the trading terminals. I'm a big fan of the trading terminals, and I think they made a great business for themselves. The first one that comes to mind is TradFi. David's built a great product there, and I use it, and I think it's a good product, and I don't think you need an aggregator for that product. Also, a lot of these trading terminals that are coming online remind me a lot of like the meme coin trading terminals. Like you're starting to see them pop up, starting to get DMs about them and things like that. And so like it kind of reminds me like peak frothiness for
so
that a little
what's
bit.
like the difference with the terminal and the aggregator? The terminal
Yeah,
just gives you
exactly.
the view of all of them,
Yeah,
basically.
So
you
like
can
back in the day with Silico, right? Like the first maybe like
yeah,
perp decks, you just get your keys. Like you can go to your exchange that you use, all of them, Hyperliquid, Bybit, Binance, like if you KYC, whatever, and you can get a trading key and you just input that in the terminal and you can basically swap in between them. And so like in Silico, if you have a Bybit key and an Hyperliquid key, you can see all of the assets across both exchanges and then just like trade on each one and it'll just auto route. And then they also have like cool order types that are like specific to in silico that can then execute on like the API key like Iceberg and like tons of cool stuff like limit chases or swarms that people love. And so I agree with Flip here, like those are basically aggregators like they are
yeah.
but they're just like better, I think, and it makes more sense.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna like the way like if you were to use Jupiter, like the trade you put on to go, buy Bitcoin or buy Solana or whatever, it might go through 3 different venues. I don't think you'll do that with perps. you go through one, and I think the trading terminals are fantastic products as they stand today.
Yeah, usually like terminals, I mean, like when you go talk to people in TradFi, right? Like they have their trading terminals, and then they like build out their own infrastructure that will actually manage the risk that they have across the different venues, right? So they can balance all of their different positions, hedge things out, whatever they're doing, right? And so like to me, it seems like that's probably the route it'll go here, right? Because it seems like it worked there, and that's how it's done there. And I don't see like, yeah, I don't know why an aggregator would do better than that, but I'm
I don't think it'll
curious.
be able to handle like the risk well. Like
That's like the main
yeah.
thing, because most sophisticated shops will build out their own risk engines beyond the terminals to manage the things themselves. So it's like I, I don't know what the aggregators would do better than the terminals right now. I mean, I've used In Silico for years and years and years, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think to your point, like I think a lot of the risk that's being managed, I think will be also quite complex. Like when you've got vaults that have spot perp equities, perp futures, spot crypto, options, binary options, and prediction markets. Like I think that's quite a complex thing to do, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially if it's consensus based instead of something more akin to ZK and Cairo VM. I think they'll really struggle, and so that's why I think specifically the perp dexes who leverage some sort of zero knowledge proofs to help the scaling of the unified margin are probably a little bit better suited to do this and manage
Even like
risk
what's
appropriately.
the latency on like a perp aggregator? Because obviously like the in
Yeah.
silico is not much latency because you're going directly via like API keys. But like I'd imagine an aggregator would probably have more latency for trades, no?
It makes sense. I would assume so. I'm not sure what Rangers
Yeah,
is
I'm not
though.
sure either. But
Yeah.
There's probably different levels of permissions, I guess you can give them too.
yeah.
Speed bumps. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. But there are a few perp aggregators coming to market, so I think worth keeping an eye on that sector. I know Paradigm invested in one as well. I saw a few months ago. But yeah, it's like interesting, just with like the perpification of everything.
Yeah, I'm starting to get DMs about like perps on like Pokemon cards and stuff like that, CS skins. I think that's I'm not sure like how well those will work, and specifically like the private market like perps. Like as it stands today, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I don't love that idea, just because like coming from traditional finance, I know fund managers underwrite individual positions differently than a different fund manager, and there's not a huge delta there, but there is a delta there, and the delta between those guys and what Bloomberg and these other news sources will put out are quite wide. So I'm afraid that you're going to start to see some of these private companies that have perps. So you're going to see big mark to markets, I'm afraid. And this is by no means to FUD them. I'm just like happy to be proven wrong and see their methodology, but I'm quite concerned that you'll see a fair amount of mark to market there. I don't think you need to perpify everything. I really don't.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like I'm a bit overboard on that.
Well, a lot of them actually like introduce like so they have like their it's like for the private company stuff, it's like they get their actual valuations from whatever's like posted, right? Like, oh, they raised it this and this. But then like in the delta in between those times when they can actually get like
Yes.
valuations, they basically like introduce like a 30-day SMA or something that just like simulates volatility. So then like the perps are more interesting to trade, quote unquote. And so like I agree with Flip here. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, at least for these like very non-fungible illiquid assets that are mostly traded via OTC or whatever. It's like you could suddenly have like some standard deviation outlier on a Pokemon card that gets bought for, I don't know, 3x floor or whatever, for some asinine reason, and suddenly like the perps will basically shoot up and then basically get nuked back down and probably just liquidate a ton of people. So
Yeah, I'm not even sure who would market make that. Like who's providing the liquidity there for something that niche. Like I don't know. I think maybe there's people out there doing it, and they're like there's already a market maker for it, and I just don't know about it. But that seems like a lot of risk that market maker would take on.
Yeah, fair enough. Flip, you were in Singapore recently,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was at
I think
Singapore.
you met with a lot of the perp teams, right?
Yeah, I tried to meet with as many as I could, a few funds, a few market makers, and things like that. It was a lot of fun. The energy out there in Singapore is quite good. It really is like this like hole people go into to like just grind for years and like really just lock in. And it was fun being in person with some of these teams. They're all grinding. They're all in the trenches. Got to meet with Bullet, and got to meet with Tristan and the crew, and it was fun to see them work. They're really excited about mainnet. I've always thought those guys were incredibly sharp, so I'm very excited to see mainnet come. Hopefully by the end of this year, and get to use their product a little bit more, because in testnet there's only so much you can learn. But very excited for what they're doing, and then also like I think they really understand like architecture. Like they built their chain really well, I think, and they're going to be able to scale with unified margin, with transactions and whatnot. So like I think, assuming they can execute and the founders stay on top of, or like they don't get behind the 8 ball, I think they'll do quite well. And the other team that I spent a lot of time with was Paradex, and I've written a report about Paradex. I follow them quite closely. Friends with Anand now and Rob and the team there, and I continue to be impressed there. And it was really telling when I came into the office the first day and worked with them. They operate with such urgency and intensity day in, day out, from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. They are grinding, and it's very intense. Like they're all shipping, they're all locked in, they know what they're doing. And the team is very diverse. It feels like a football team was put together. So I did enjoy seeing that. There weren't many copycats. They're very efficient. So very excited for what they're building. And I think the architecture and microstructure designs that no one wants to talk about because they're quite nerdy and in the weeds, I think the benefits of those are going to really start to come to light. And you kind of already seeing that a little bit now. You had Binance announce they're doing RPI orders yesterday, which Paradex does, and they've really leaned into. So I'm quite optimistic for that. And I think they're an incredible team that ships at an incredibly high rate, and I'm excited for dated options and multi-leg strats to come to the platform. So very excited for what's happening there as well.
Right on. It's interesting that all the perp guys work out of Singapore. Singapore is a
Yeah.
weird place to me. It's like
Yeah,
it's
far.
kind
It's
of
a
like
long flight.
yeah, but it's like they have a lot of strict regulation, but then also they don't. It's like maybe to build out of it, it's okay, but then you don't want to like maybe use some products out of it. I don't know.
It was cool though. It was fun. Like the culture there is fun. The team's there. There's a lot of energy. You're in a WeWork. You've got Falcon X. You've got Spartan. You've got Paradex. Like it was fun. Like the energy there is good for perps. It was fun. It was plus EV trip. Good to meet these guys, and incredibly excited for the products they have coming. And then you had Lighter raise too, which was cool. Lighter just raised from Robinhood and a bunch of other people. They missed out. They raised 68 million instead of 69, but we'll let that slide. But like that's an interesting product that'll be coming to market, or like the token will be coming to market soon. And
Yeah,
I think it's go ahead.
1.5, right?
Yeah, which I thought was quite cheap. So they must be doing, and so like DeFi Llama just came out with revenues for Lighter at like 250 million annualized. I think that's quite high. I think that should be cut by at least a half, maybe more. I've done some estimates, and I think their premium flow of volume is a lot closer to like 25-30%. It might be closer to 40 today, just given people are farming premium accounts. So like, for people who don't know, their premium accounts are accounts that pay for flow, and they get latency advantages. And generally speaking, that's usually market makers. But recently, after 1010, they increased the points distribution to people who had the premium accounts. So you've got retail users paying for premium accounts to farm points. And that percent of flow, I think, is much closer to like 20-25%. And if that's the case, their revenues are closer to like 80 to 90 million annualized. So I think the investors actually probably got quite a good deal on Lighter at 1.5. Like if I had been offered that, I definitely would have taken it as well. I think this is a good team, and it's clear that Robinhood wants that connection to hopefully at some point integrate Lighter into the Robinhood platform.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I think you saw Binance really rush to market with Aster too. So I think you're seeing these bigger centralized parties realizing that they need a perp arm.
Yeah. I think like this is actually something we're writing about in our year head.
Yeah.
Is like the super app idea. And I think that the super app is going to be from one of these centralized entities, right? So I think like Robinhood is one that could do it. I think Coinbase is one that could do it. I think Twitter X is one, right? Like they have they don't have the finance or like the TradFi or the crypto integrations, but they have arguably the hardest one to get, which is the large social network, right? Um, and so I do think that this whole super app idea is coming. And so yeah, Robinhood investing in Lighter makes sense there. If they're gonna, I'm assuming that they would probably do something with that with Robinhood. Um, and so yeah, it will be interesting to see kind of like how we go here with these more centralized entities coming in and how they kind of navigate crypto. I think a few other things like Monad is doing their raise now. They're going next week. Seems like they haven't tapped out demand yet on Coinbase. I'm not sure if that's like all just Monad specific or just people just like don't have money, right?
I think it's also because of the way the sales set up with like the lowest contributions get like priority to the most amount, and so like it's kind of discouraging like the power law funders to like full send. You know, like we saw with like Mega ETH, we saw it with Plasma. Like a lot of these sales end up being just like a gas war to who can send 50 mil or whatever with whales. And so like I do kind of like the Monad system where yeah, maybe they don't fill their entire ICO, but like Keon came out and said like that they're basically their goal is to achieve widest distribution. So I think it's like an interesting experiment at the very least. Like if you do reward the lowest contributors with like the most tokens, could be
I
kind of
didn't
interesting.
realize that. What do you mean the most tokens though? Just like they get the allocation that they asked for?
Flip or someone might know better than me because I didn't look into it too deeply. But so the way the sale works is like it prioritizes like distribution over like money as far as like capital commitments per person. And so like this is me like off the top of my head. I think the mechanism works like they're basically trying to give people who give 1 to 10k allocation first. Like basically it's giving them the allocation first. I don't think they get more per dollar per se, but like it's incentivizing
Yeah, the
like
price is fixed. So it's
yeah,
just like they get filled. That is interesting. So they're prioritizing giving it to more people. But yeah, that does make an interesting game. If you do the full allocation, could you actually get zero because there's so many of these smaller ones?
yeah. It's going to be interesting. And there's like the game theory of like getting your Coinbase ICO score up because like they mentioned like you might have less access to next ICOs. Like it's kind of like how Robinhood does their IPOs, right? Like if you just like do an IPO on Robinhood and then like full stack once it comes out, like you don't get access to IPOs on Robinhood for a bit, I think. So like there is that element to it. So like where it's like a little bit of game theory where maybe you want a good rep score on Coinbase for future Sonar, Echo, or just like Coinbase ICOs in general. But like I don't know, I'm pretty optimistic to like see both Mega ETH and Monad come out because like tech wise, like they're pretty good chains and like there's some cool app ecosystems on them at least. And so it'll be fun to say the least to have more of like another fast consumer ish chains launching. So it's gonna be fun.
I still don't understand like what's like the pitch for Monad. Like that's so one like I also don't like follow it super closely. Like what's the thesis there? What's the narrative?
Just that it's the most performant EVM L1.
General purpose, or they got like an app they're really putting weight behind.
They have a big lineup of apps. They don't have one that they're like championing. They do. That is one of the critiques I think from people is that they haven't been picking winners and pushing them, right? So we'll see. They do have a lot of apps going day one, which I think gives them a pretty good shot. And yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty bullish on that ecosystem developing over time. I wouldn't be surprised if like there's rollups on Monad at some point, just because it is a good place to launch rollups, because it is performant as like single slot finality and everything, and that's kind of what you need in a you know a layer that's going to facilitate rollups. Although that's like nothing to do with their roadmap. That's just something I think you could maybe see one day. And then yeah, Mega ETH 2, they're doing their mainnet in December, so we'll see how liquidity kind of gets shifted around all these different venues. Do you think that like, so it seems like throughout the years, we always have these long tail things that bring in retail, right? Like Monad and Mega ETH launching on their own is not going to change the amount of users in crypto, like everything equal. So you'll kind of just expect liquidity to shift from other areas. But we always have these things like DeFi summer and then NFTs and then meme coins and then perps, you can probably say, that are like net new, bringing new people in. Um, I don't know. What are you guys kind of thinking like this next? And then basically, because like basically once one of these long tail games gets played out, it's kind of like over, you know? Like the DeFi games don't last long anymore. The meme coins do not run anymore. NFTs have been in a bear market since 2021, right? Um, it's like once people figure out the game, it's kind of like over and that game is figured out. And so obviously it's hard to predict exactly what the next big retail onboarding event is going to be. My inclination is that like I'm hoping there's some sort of social thing and maybe Monad or Mega ETH or one of these to do it. But I'm curious what you guys think would bring retail in, and I'm not talking about just you have like these tempos of the world that are going to have people starting to use blockchains in the back end. I mean, like actually bringing net new users
I mean, I
in.
think prediction markets have been that because it's like a
True.
safer way to grow a smaller stack. Like everyone shouts about liquidity, right? Like, oh, they're not enough liquidity for power law users. And while that's true, it also means that they're very friendly to someone with like $200 or $500. They can easily like 2, 3, 5x their stack in relatively quick succession, which is like, it reminds me a lot of how I got my start, like flipping whitelist NFTs, because it was kind of similar. Like you kind of know, like, okay, this is like a safe mint, probably going to make money on this. And like, sure, maybe you weren't like having these huge power law outcomes like you did with meme coins, but it was safer to like grow a small stack and it felt a little bit less like gambling. So I think like the appeal to prediction markets is definitely there. Because like there are certain ones that are like, you can basically just put $1,000 into like a 70%, 80% market that is basically guaranteed to be 100% and just make a quick 20%. That being said, on like the more power law outcome side, yeah, I don't know. I think like the upside of crypto is that it's basically an entirely free market, and as such, like we've seen in the past with NFTs and meme coins, like when there is a lot of profit to be made, more firms enter. Classic economics, like economic profit goes to zero, market becomes too efficient, all the new tools launch, botting, multi-wallets, vamping and stuff, and then like there's no profits to be made anymore. And so whatever the next thing is, I don't know. I think there will be a next thing. I think it's just going to look much different, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I tend to think what we've seen, like we had DeFi summer, we had meme coins, we got prediction markets, perps. I think it's just like the next iteration of those as those products become better. Specifically perps, as like the on-off ramps get integrated into the platforms, as risk and the risk you're taking becomes more understandable and visible. I think that brings on a lot of users. Like for my TradFi background, I've got a fair amount of friends who do like perps, who do like that trading interface, because that's very what they're used to. But like they still haven't come on chain yet. They're still not trading on these platforms yet. And I think as the onboarding friction slowly goes away over the years, a year, hopefully, I think those bring on a lot more users, because that's something people are used to. I mean, it's kind of why people come into crypto in the first place. Like I remember when I first got into crypto, it was trading Doge on Robinhood. Like it's the trading aspect, I think, for a lot of people. And as the friction to get onboarded to these platforms continues to go away, I think we see a lot of user growth there.
It's tough, right? Like, I mean, I don't think the next massive wave of people coming into crypto are coming in for like financial like apps like trading and stuff. I just like it's super popular for us, right? Because like it's the world we live in. It's like our backgrounds, a lot of us like prior to crypto, like finance, trading, things like that. But like I don't know, there isn't much of it. Like when I talk to all of my friends who aren't finance people or crypto people, like trading is not something they entertain the idea of doing at all. So like I think it has to like a real like driver of like new blood into crypto, I think has to come from something other than trading products. I just don't.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's like one of the I did this podcast with A Priori, who's a Noma guy, coming out this week, and like we talked about all this stuff. And the biggest, you know, I guess issue with crypto historically is that whenever we onboard people as traders, and that's just like not sustainable. It's like not.
Yeah, because it's zero sum, right? Like
It's
you're
and it's
eventually
like most people are not traders, man. This is like not, and so that's why as much as the streaming meta and everything and the content creator coins is, yeah, you need gambling for it to all work, for the wheel to run. But the people coming in don't need to actually be doing that gambling themselves, right? And so it's like a baby step on getting somewhere where you can actually have people come in and just earn and not have to become traders, right? So I do think that that's kind of the only way. Like we've probably onboarded most of the trader types, in like mid-teens to mid-30s at this point. I think if you're in that age group and you haven't come on yet, then you're probably not for like pure trading stuff. And so yeah, you kind of need, and prediction markets is an interesting one, but it's still kind of like it's still like, gambling in a sense there. So
Yeah, I mean, like, as like a college student, like I think fundamentally people don't realize how financial adverse. Like most normies hate finance talk. Like that's why they have an FA. That's why they have an accountant do everything to do with their money. They have like, Rocket Mortgage. They have auto savings app that auto direct money because they just hate it. And it's not because like I don't think. I mean, the lack of financial literacy is there, sure, but it's also like they just don't want to spend the mental acuity or bandwidth on that kind of thing. They'd rather spend on what they actually like doing. And so, like, to Sutters's point, I think you do need to, like, hobbyify it in a sense, like and, like, I think, again, like, they try and force trading to be that hobby where it's not. Like, most college students at my college, they all play sports, fantasy sports, right? Like, they all gamble on fantasy sports or low stakes, whatever. But they don't do it to, like, make more money per se. Like, they're not doing it to, like, try and make it out the hood or whatever, quote, unquote, or to, like, trade or hit that big parlay. Like, they literally do it for, like, social fun. Like, they gather their homies around on a Friday night and then, like, they're all bet. And so, like, there's the skin in the game and, like, it's fun and, like, that
for
type of
sure,
thing.
for sure. My fantasy league is year 16 now.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like
I give
it's more
zero
for
shits
fun.
about winning the money. Like
Yes,
it's
yes.
not the money. I don't care about that,
But
right?
like I think people see like how big FanDuel is or whatever, and then they extrapolate that to mean like all these people are like trying to make a ton of money on these platforms and like are traders, and then they put that into the TAM of these like social trading apps or whatever that are inherently very zero sum and PvP. So yeah, to your point, like I think probably the next thing will probably be more socialified, I'd imagine, but like I think you'll kind of know it when you see it if you've been in crypto long enough. Like a lot of these trends are very easy to spot, like culturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Um all right. Well, I think that's like all our topics for today. I don't want to run this too long. It's been kind of like, I don't know, the last month or so just feels it's just such a weird environment. I do think things will eventually turn around, and sometimes people could sometimes lose interest during these dead times, but I always think that these are important times to like keep paying attention so that when things do change, you're like fully engaged and like alert of like what has actually been happening, right? You know, have to play catch up. So, as much as these times can be boring or they suck, I also sometimes see them as like an opportunity to like set yourself up better when things come
Yeah,
back.
LTR and I were chatting about this yesterday. The best part about bear markets and why we like bear markets is it's so much easier to find teams who are actually building and grinding in the trenches, and you don't get distracted.
Yeah, you you have way more time to like do stuff.
Yeah,
You don't feel rushed.
I always bring up like man, like I bring up this to Flip in this exact conversation, like Pendle and Maple, like two like DeFi blue chips now, were at like zero post FTX, and like their teams were just like grinding through that bear market, or like Virtuals was like a gaming DAO, and they pivoted to be, and now they're like the biggest crypto ACP agentic protocol. Like so, I think like it is like really good selection during a bear market. So if you do have that cash and you haven't just been absolutely dog walked in spot, then I think it'll be pretty clear, like, eventually, like, "Oh, this team is really stuck around, probably a good bid," it's not really gonna go down anymore, and that's kinda why, like, I think, like, the MetaDAO, Futarki stuff could be interesting during a bear, or just anything that does have, like, a carrot dangled in front of them, so to speak, so that they want to continue to build.
cash is king, right? I remember, I mean, it was a different environment, but in 2021, I was working at a TradFi shop, and one of my mentors, his name was Scott, and his profile name on Slack, he changed it to cash is king. And it's just like in bear markets and drawdowns, regardless of what the dollar's doing, like having cash is king. So always have some cash on the sideline.
Yeah, cash is king, and then cash is trash, and you just go back and
Yeah,
forth
it is. It
between
goes through cycles, but
those.
right now, cash is king.
Well, all right, guys. Good app. Next week is U.S. Thanksgiving, so all the Americans, happy Thanksgiving. Sure, it'll be a quiet week overall. Make sure that you shill crypto to all your relatives, because I think we need all the support we can get
Everyone
right
should
now.
Zcash to their grandma.
Yeah, we really
Yeah.
need all the support.
Private
Yeah,
market.
maybe coalesce around a few coins. Don't we have too many
Mine
tokens.
specifically.
Just
Like, grandma, you can
like,
play bingo privately and you can like tax evade. It's gonna be so great.
maybe, yeah. But yeah, cool. Thanks for joining, guys, and we'll see everybody again in a couple weeks.
So.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.